This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room, A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia. Senate Committee Room A305. This is the Senate of Virginia, Richmond, Virginia.
Watching. I'm Delegate Candy Munden King. I'm getting a really bad echo. So could I ask everyone to mute themselves? So I'm Delegate Candy Munden King, and this is subcommittee number 3 of the Pandemic Recovery and Response Committee. And so I just want to ask the committee members online to please introduce yourself. We will start with Delegate Shen.
It doesn't surprise me, Chairwoman King, that you would call me out here. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Irene Shin. I represent the 8th District in the Virginia House of Delegates, which is Northwest Fairfax County, includes the town of Herndon, Chantilly, and neighborhoods in Fair Oaks as well. It's great to be with y'all.
Thank you. And then I saw Senator Sutterline. And we'll go over to Senator Hashmi.
Good,
Oh, there he is.
Good afternoon. I'm David Suderline. I represent Roanoke, Salem, Roanoke County, Benton, Christiansburg, and Montgomery County in the Virginia Senate.
Wonderful. And we'll go to Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'm Senator Ghazala Hashmi, representing the 15th Senatorial District, which is parts of City of Richmond and Chesterfield County.
Thank you. And then I believe we have some non-elected members here as well. So if you'll just take a moment to introduce yourself. All right. Well, I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
I can't show the result to you while you're in the car.
Sorry. Sorry about that. So, Amigo, I think first up on our agenda is a review of our policy options. And this is really a conversation for this subcommittee to talk about how we want to move forward with these recommendations. So I will hand it over to the staff to guide us through that conversation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just from an overall standpoint, I think we have 2 representatives from Tidal Basin on the line, Jessica and Carrie. Myself and Lauren are also on the line as the DLS staff. But so just want to give a brief overview of how we got to where we are now. The draft final action report was provided to the subcommittee chairs, and the subcommittee chairs provide a full copy of that report and breakouts for each of the subcommittees, and that was provided to each of the subcommittee members, and they were asked to focus on the observations and recommendations that were specific to their subcommittee and provide any suggestions, comments, or additional recommendations. In addition, if there were any questions or concerns with the report, they were asked to provide them also. While that was going on, the Legislative Services was working with subject matter attorneys to develop a range of possible policy options. So when we had the meeting on the 29th of October, that's when we had the sort of like the full enchilada. We had the draft final report, the observations and the recommendations, and the range of policy options. It's important to note that we also received some policy options from the subcommittee members. So that document that we later turned into the policy option worksheet is basically all of the options that were put forward for today's meeting. I'm sorry, was there?
No, I was just going to interject to say thank you and to offer, if you don't mind. So I did have an opportunity to look through some of those, and I wanted to, if the committee if we agree to just go ahead and start some conversations about the specific policy recommendations, because we don't have that many, and I'm happy to guide us through that if helpful, amigo.
Oh, that's fine. It is the chair's prerogative.
Any objection from the committee? I really want to, respect everyone's time, and I know that you all have put a lot of time into this committee. So just wanted to go through some of the recommendations and maybe give us a couple of minutes to. So Amigo has given us options to discuss further or not recommend it for discussion. Senators in particular really welcome your input on the discuss further or not recommend it, because I know that you all were heavily involved in a lot of the decisions and conversations during the pandemic. The Delegate Shen and I were not elected yet. So welcome your conversation there. One that I wanted to pull out from the very top is this recommendation to local school boards to adopt a memoranda of understanding with a telehealth provider to ensure that students have access, or to increase student access to virtual mental health counseling. So wanted to put that recommendation to the floor for discussion. So welcome everyone to share their thoughts on that recommendation. And granted, I know that, Senator Hashmi, I see your hand.
Thank you. I thought I'd use the raise hand feature here. And so, well, I really appreciate all of the recommendations that had been outlined for us to consider. And as I was going through this document, it seems to me like many of them fall into some buckets, and maybe we were able to take them up as buckets and see what are the specific next steps within each of those areas. And so certainly the first one, which is focused on mental health options and making sure that there are MOUs in place and that telehealth services are available to students is, I think, a critical one. There are several of the policy proposals that focus on mental health concerns, and as I read through all of them, they seemed quite necessary and appropriate for us to take action on. So that was one bucket I saw, and then I know we're going to continue to look at the other options as well, but there seemed to be some focus around legal issues for K-12 and schools and school boards, and then process issues in terms of how do we effectively communicate, what are the roles and responsibilities of our school districts and our educators and so forth. So just considering them under all of these proposals under these kind of large umbrellas, I think might be useful to us. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that. And then one thing that I noted, that it is a memoranda of understanding or a policy. And I think that piece is really important, because I'm certainly not a fan of mandating things to school systems like MOUs or contracts with providers that all school systems may not be able to do. So just wanted to consider that those are either or policy or MOU with the provider. Senator Suderline, I see your hand.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would think having a required MOU, sort of like you just referenced, I think that'd be problematic to a lot of folks. So I have concerns about that. So as that gets explored and looked at longer, some of the smaller school divisions I used to represent, when we make requirements on them, it's very problematic. So I appreciate your comments as well as we move forward. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Senator. And Delegate Shen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on that piece, theoretically, it could be just a directive to ask the Department of Education to develop, adopt, and distribute a model and allow schools to opt into adopting said model if they wanted to. And we don't have to go the route where it requires school districts to necessarily adopt the MOU or provide the mental health teletherapy, but like that there would be guidance from this SDOE that provides the model in which to do it.
Thank you for that. And Amigo, if we're making a note of that, I think there
Okay.
is some consensus around
Mhm.
we certainly don't want to recommend, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not necessarily interested in recommending any mandates for the school systems.
Yes,
But
Madam Chair, and I think that actually that would actually put it more in line with what is currently in 22.1 to 72.2, where there's sort of a model MOU, as the Delegate Shin was saying. So yeah, I am taking notes on that. So can change it from a mandate to more of a model that local school boards can use or not use.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you for that. So I think that is one that we can, as a subcommittee, recommend moving further discussion on that, with the note that we are not interested in not really interested in a mandate. So sounds, any objections? And I apologize, I can't see I'm moving around, so I may not see hands on the screen. So please feel free to jump in. So I think it is the recommendation of this group that we continue further discussion on providing some guidance to school districts on telehealth mental health services. And then next recommendation is to amend sections of the code to get more specific on the types of mental health awareness training or subjects and topics that they must cover. And so welcome any feedback on that recommendation. Yes, I see a hand. Allison?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm here on behalf of the Secretary of Education, but just wanted to encourage the subcommittee to consider highlighting in this recommendation the mental health first aid trainings that are offered through the partnership of VDOE and DBHDS. These have been really well received by divisions and have had really good school nurse participation as well. I think we had 30 school nurses in the spring and then another 240 in the summer, and we'll continue to offer those trainings, but just wanted to highlight that partnership as part of this recommendation.
Thank you, Allison. Question for you, and it's fine if you don't know offhand. So there is I believe the Red Cross does like a mental health first aid. Is this the same training, or is this something different?
I am not totally sure, but I can get back to you with an answer.
Okay, that's great. But thank you so much for that recommendation and informing our thinking on that as well. Any other thoughts from the committee? So thanks to Allison, I am now very open to this idea. I was not a fan of this recommendation because I just didn't know if we needed to be getting into the specifics of what types of training schools are receiving. But if you all have identified something that is working, I would like to explore that more. And I see a hand from Delegate Shin.
Thanks, Chairman King. For Allison, were you saying that that was a program, the mental health first aid program that's being implemented by or designed by DBHDS? Is that what you said it was?
Yes, it's a partnership with VDOE and DBHDS.
Got it. Thank you. And that partnership, so who's design? I'm sorry, I have many questions because I didn't know about this. So who's designing the program or the training, and then who's it being rolled out to?
I'm not totally sure on that. I'm happy to drop a link and get back to you with more specifics on exactly who's designing and who's participating as well.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I would just say that in light of that I think to your point, I wasn't also a fan of this one because it's sort of the same idea here where we're requiring school boards to adopt and implement policies that requires further trainings for our faculty. And that makes me a little bit hesitant. And I think the maybe better alternative would be to ask VDOE and or DBHDS, whoever's got this, to roll it out and like present it as guidance for localities to be able to adopt, because the idea of mandating this kind of training for all of our teachers it sounds burdensome to me. And but like for other personnel like school nurses and or counselors, like that might be a better fit. So those are some of my concerns on this one.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Senator Hashmi?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I share Delegate Shin's concerns in terms of adding additional training requirements. I know the hours of training are quite comprehensive, and I believe there is already a component around mental health awareness, but that's something I would want to just see exactly what we are doing, and being clear about who's developing the training program and the content of the training program is something that I would like us as a committee to also review if we move forward with this recommendation.
Thank you. Senator Suderline?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would also further chime in on that line of thinking. Delegate Shin's comments on that pretty much identical to my views on that. And we just see so many, worthwhile trainings that folks want us to mandate. And I think making it available is a far better way than requiring it of every teacher.
Thank you for that. Look at this bipartisanship. Allison, and the committee and Amigo in particular, I know that JLARC has also looked into this issue a lot. It seems that there is some consensus that I may be out here on an island by myself on this one. I think there is some consensus from the committee that we are not ready to really move forward with this recommendation. And please chime in if I'm getting that wrong, but we're not ready to move forward with this recommendation. But Amigo, it would be helpful to see if this issue is maybe being addressed by JLARC or some other entity that has a better grasp on the current load of training for teachers. And Allison, I do want to reiterate that it would probably be very helpful to send more information about that training, because our discuss further or not recommending for discussion is going to go to the full committee. So there's still time to continue the conversation. But I think at this time, we may want to table that one.
Okay. Madam Chair, would you want me to include something? Because I'm going to put together a document after this meeting. You want me to put something in this for this discussion to, I guess, reference the current program?
Yes.
And so, Allison, Ms. Buckner, I'm sorry, I'll contact you to get some information so that we can include it in here.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. And then next on our list is so this is a mental health training or a similar program, and I think I know where this might be headed as well. It seems as though Senator Hashmi, this is a recommendation that requiring staff to attend at least once a training module of resources for teachers and staff. It seems like we're already doing that for mental health, for high risk mental health issues.
It's my understanding that we have guidelines like this already in place, but maybe Allison could give us more insight on that.
I don't have that information for you, but again, I will follow up with our agencies and make sure that question is answered.
Okay. So with that in mind, if there are any objections from the committee, I think we should table that one as well. Great. So next up is directing the board to establish model policies providing for the provision of peer-to-peer mental health counseling and requiring each school board to adopt and implement policies in accordance with such model policies. And Allison, I certainly don't want to put you on the spot because this may not be your area, but can you explain if you or anyone who was involved has information on peer-to-peer mental health counseling and what that may entail?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, apologize, I do not have that information on me, but again, I will make sure that we touch base with agencies and have them get that answer to the subcommittee.
Okay, great. So yes, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is one that I was concerned about just because I didn't see the kind of specific details that I think we would need in order to consider it further in terms of the training that would be provided to students who might engage in peer-to-peer efforts or other entities. I think I need personally some more clarification about what peer-to-peer counseling looks like and how it would function and what kind of support and training would be in place to actually implement it. I'm just a little leery because, you know, having licensed professional counseling services is one thing, and there may also then be liability issues. And so I would be cautious about this particular recommendation.
Thank you for that. Anyone feel differently? Okay. Delegate Shin doesn't feel differently. So barring any objection from, I think Senator Suderline is the only one I haven't heard from. I think we'll table this one for now.
Yep,
Does that
sounds
make
good, Madam Chair.
Okay, great. So next on our list is amending the code to include ongoing mental health support program for teachers. And so open the floor for comments on that, which so just giving my comment, I certainly think this is an interesting and worthwhile concept. However, the framing looks like it's including it in the standard teacher mentorship category. And I'm not exactly comfortable with that because I know that more seasoned teachers often take on multiple teachers to mentor new teachers. And so that certainly wouldn't want to create any burdens for those teachers who are taking on those roles, but welcome the committee's feedback. Yes, Senator Hashmi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I have the similar concerns as with the previous recommendation. Again, mentorship on pedagogy is one thing, but being able to provide mental health support or counseling services within a mental health program, teacher to teacher, I think that's quite a different expectation that one would be placing on educators. And so I have the same caution about issues of liability, not having licensed professional counselors in place. Those are the same concerns again that I have.
Yeah. Delegate Shin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would agree with Senator Hashmi's sentiments here on like the concerns around liability. I did, however, want to say that I agree with the concept of being able to provide more mental health support for teachers, but I don't think the right answer is to provide it through other teachers. I think if we're looking for levers of relief as opposed to added burden, I'd be interested in following some sort of a solution that provides further mental health support for systems or for school divisions to provide for their teachers. But for all the reasons that Senator Hashmi said, I don't think that I support the peer-to-peer model here.
Okay. So So I think we have some consensus around we're not very interested in creating another role for teachers to provide mental health support. However, there does appear, as we think back into, and what are we in, year 5 now, of since the pandemic. As we think back, I think that there was a major toll on teachers and their mental health, that, part of this committee is, how do we prepare for, you know, heaven forbid, the next emergency situation. So I would like to present for this committee's consideration that we, two things. First, that we table this idea of including mental health support in the teacher mentoring section of the code, but that we add further discussion on mental health support for teachers and staff. And maybe that's something we can explore. Any objection to that? Okay. Now, this next one, this is a big one, and then I'm gonna speed these up a little bit if you all don't mind, because I know some folks have a hard stop at 2 o'clock. So this is a large one. This is to establish community advisory boards to engage local leaders. Uh any thoughts on that? So one of it says that, this could be amended to be mandatory rather than permissive, and expanded to include representation from mental health professionals and mental health resources. So this is the creation of community advisory boards. And I wanted to ask, I think, is it Jessica or someone from the consultant who may want to explain this a little more?
Sure. This is Jessica Henry. I'm just having a little bit of a video issue. Sure. Happy to expand on that. And so one of the takeaways, let me pull up my larger document. A little bit more detail that we incorporated here was engaging local leaders and parents and community members through advisory boards and or community meetings has proven successful in a variety of initiatives, not only within the Commonwealth, but elsewhere across the country post-pandemic. And these platforms could be an effective way to ensure that the public health measures are developed in an inclusive manner and communicated holistically to the community. So that was sort of the background information. And then Amigo and his team were able to develop these policy options based on existing infrastructure within the Commonwealth's legislature. So, Amigo, do you have additional thoughts on this policy options for the team?
Yeah, I think that the policy option was not trying to create something new, but was trying to look at what was already there and kind of expand it to include some additional members.
Okay, so these already exist, is what I'm hearing.
But the existence of a school health advisory board, that option exists, and I think what we were putting forward is perhaps expanding that the membership to include some mental health and some additional local leaders.
Okay. Delegate Shannon, I see your hand raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple of questions. So the first one was, could you remind me who Jessica Henry is on her role on the consulting team for this?
Oh, yes, I apologize, Delegate Schrin. My name is Jessica Henry. I'm one of the project team members with Tidal Basin who was helping facilitate this effort for the Commonwealth.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Jessica. I really appreciate it. Second, when I'm looking at this document, Amigo, I'm looking at this part on section 22.1-199.7 relating to community schools. Are you using that this piece that comes after relating to community schools, comma, that is a recommendation, but not necessarily what is already in code?
Well, I think that those three sections that are listed under that item 1 under 3.1.2 It's saying that that there are sections that are already available and they can be expanded on because those sections already call for.
Oh, I see.
Could be used as a basis for like adding information or even looking at them as an example of how to put something together. So I think that they exist, but they don't exist in this space.
Got it. So sorry, I should have pulled up the code first before I asked that because what I was actually going to ask if you knew off the top of your head what the definition of a community school is.
No, I do not. But
Okay.
I can find that out for you.
I'm going to pull it up right now. I'm going to get there. Okay, great. Thank you. And I guess that all that to say then, Madam Chair, that second one is the only one that I have a real sort of questions that still remain. On the first one, in permitting school boards to provide additional resources, track with outside entities, I think it gives them the flexibility they need to find the right providers for development of resources, and I feel okay about that. And then for the other one around community builders pilot programs for helping sort of holistically youth and young people's mental health in our communities, I feel okay with that as well.
Great. Any other thoughts on this one? It seems like we could have some further discussion on this, but not really ready to make a strong recommendation. Without any objection, I'll put this in the discuss further category and make notes of Delegate Shins. And then I want to, excuse me, go through these next because I do believe we have some public comment and I want to make sure we have time for that. And so next is another big one, which is to propose policies on hybrid learning. And this one where I may check in with Allison because I think we have you all already established some guidance on hybrid learning?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to emphasize on this point as well that VDOE and the Secretary of Education share strong support for improving on some of those more parent-friendly pages and interfaces. I'm not 100% sure on the guidance, but again, we'll get you that answer. But I also wanted to highlight that earlier this year, the Board of Ed received a really robust report from Virtual Virginia and an overview of the other online models that exist. And then the board will be receiving the report on virtual learning options in their December board meeting, which could also be really valuable in informing that recommendation.
Thank you for that. From a parent perspective, I think with a little reworking, this could be very helpful because I think what this is recommending is that school divisions be required to post their policy as well as state guidance related to virtual learning in a public space. And as I can tell you, as someone with 3 kids and 3 different schools that have 3 different approaches to virtual learning and orange days and blue days, this might be really a helpful tool for parent engagement. But wanted to open the floor for any other comments from the committee. Anyone feel strongly against this one? If not, we will add it to the discuss further and just do a little more cleaning and clarification on exactly what we want the school systems to post in a public space. All right, not hearing any objection, we will go on to, oh, we have quite a few. I'm sorry, I thought that was our last page. So strengthen communication and public information strategies. So these are bills related to the IEP, writing, facilitating, and tracking IEPs. And we have some legislation from session. And Amigo, was this signed by the governor? Is this law
Yes.
now or okay?
Yes, those two. Yeah, they were signed by the governor and the acts of assembly now as of the 4th of April.
Okay, so I don't know that do we need to do anything with this?
No, the the DLF staff was saying if you wanted to do something with it, this would be a good starting point. Just in terms of if you want to expand it, that's why this was included.
Okay. So open the floor to the committee for any thoughts on this.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I think this is a good recommendation. I know our students with IEPs and special needs students suffered the most during the pandemic, and a lot of the concerns were around communication issues as well as being able to deploy education options for many students and families. And I think focusing on this would be a good step forward as we lay a foundation for how we can better serve the needs of special needs students should we have another crisis again like this.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, I think what the policy option that we were putting forward was looking at those two bills that passed as models for putting together the requirement of developing and implementing a statewide information system. So that would say looking at what was done with those two bills as legislation going forward in terms of the information piece.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this? Delegate Shin?
Thanks, Madam Chair. I was just going to say, I agree with Senator Hashmi on like this. It sounds like the establishment of a statewide system for data sharing would be helpful. I'm sorry to take us back one, but on the virtual learning piece and the hybrid learning, did we land on not recommending for discussion the directive to, or like asking VDOE to develop sort of guidelines and information on like the policies for virtual learning and hybrid learning classrooms?
So my recommendation is that we move forward and continue the discussion with recommending that local school districts post the information. I was not necessarily recommending that VDOE establish recommendations because I think Allison is going to get back with us about where we currently stand with that.
Got it. Okay. Copy that.
Okay. So 3.2.1, I think we want to continue for further discussion. Amigo, if you could just make a note, because I know this is under education, but if we could make a note for special education in particular, just to highlight, as Senator Hashmi said, the outsized impact of the pandemic to people with disabilities and students in our system. So would like to call that out a little bit, that this is specifically for special education.
Okay, and that was for 3.2.1?
Yes. And then this is in 3.2.1 as well. The Baltimore City Youth Data Hub and Integrated Electronic Data Management System. Oh, these are just examples. So I think we're moving forward. So moving on to 3.2.2, create and maintain legal guidance and support network. And so this is the lack of existing legislation highlights the difficulty of developing, implementing, and maintaining legal advisory networks. And so would ask Amigo or, I see Senator Suderline, jump on in there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Every school division has its own local council, and so I don't think it's a good idea to be creating this legal network and the challenges that would come from that. Every school division in the Commonwealth already has local council, and seems like that's a better path than switching, or not switching, but adding this to it.
And if I may, Madam Chair, in line with what Senator Suderline is saying, what my staff came up with was we couldn't find where anyone had done anything that would put in place some real line legal guidance, probably because most school boards have their own counsel, and we just didn't. So we didn't really have a policy option for this one, other than to say it would be very difficult to do, especially if you're talking about real-time legal guidance.
So I will take it from you, Legal Eagles, and say I think that we're not recommending moving forward with this one, which takes us to our final and could possibly leave us with a few minutes for public comment. So develop comprehensive plans for school closures. So legislation could be introduced directing the Department of Education to develop and make available to each school board and post on its website in a publicly accessible location comprehensive and uniform guidelines relating to school closures. And this is where not to pick on you, Allison, but I believe we have something in the works to this line. Do you know if you all have already worked on something like this?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's our understanding that most, if not all schools, have plans in place for emergency situations. But additionally, this summer, DCJS had school safety plans, and in those, we received a lot of feedback on them. And the feedback is just the importance of communication plans, parental communication protocol, and then also the importance of annually evaluating and amending those school safety plans as well.
So do they submit, so each school district has a plan, and then do they submit those plans to you all? Just for your record, not that you need to approve them.
I'm not sure on the submission to if they submit those plans, but again, can get that information for the subcommittee.
Okay, thank you. And I'll open it up to the subcommittee for any comment.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Senator Hashmi.
It's my understanding, but I appreciate Allison double checking, but it is my understanding that all school divisions are required to submit these plans to VDOE and also post on their website or any public facing options. And so with this particular recommendation, I thought we were already doing this, and I thought school divisions had emergency closure plans in place that were shared with the public. Now, if it's a statewide plan that ensures that every school district is following the similar criteria, that might be helpful and useful. But, and I may be wrong, but I thought Senator Suderline worked on this a couple of years ago. So I'm going to put him on the spot in case that was one of his bills that we saw.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And to Senator Hashmi, legislation that Delegate McNamara and I carried a few years ago was trying to make it so that school divisions, when they had, we talked about snow day or water main, especially the unanticipated ones, and create a process so that they could more easier use virtual for short-term situations that were unanticipated. And that's where our legislation was. But yeah, I think that I'm not sure that we actually need to go forward with a recommendation on this. I think we can check on it, but I think that it's pretty much in the works already.
Thank you for that. So, Amigo, could we, and barring any objection from the committee, could we table this one and research the status of school closure just so the committee can and Allison can get back to us?
Okay. Yeah. Yes, Madam Chair. And Allison, I can circle back with you to make sure so that we have the information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That gets to the end of our recommendations. And I want to flip a little bit because I want to make sure we have time for public comment. So wanted to, Jillian, do we have people who have registered to speak?
Yes, Madam Chair. It looks like we have 2 online.
Okay.
I'll start with Shelley Arnaldi.
And Shelley, if we could keep your public comment to 2 minutes, we would greatly appreciate it. Jillian, please feel free to share my contact if there's, further information you would like to share that the 2 minutes won't allot. Please feel free to reach out to us directly.
All right. Looks like I have promoted her to panelist.
So Shelly, you have the floor.
Okay, I didn't really prepare a speech. I'm just paying attention because I didn't know what to expect for this entire process. I have been reading through all the materials pretty closely. I had a lot of comments, yelling into the empty screen the whole time. So I guess what I would ask is that, well, okay, let's go to the beginning. I have 2 minutes. The last thing you talked about was school closures. I would ask that you looked into school closures and recognize the fact that that was all a terrible idea. So rather than look at the method of closing them, recognize it should have never happened. There's absolutely no evidence that said schools should have been closed. It did way more harm than good. So if I could provide evidence, research, any data for you to look at before you guys decide how you're going to close it again, because that led to all the other discussion, which was majority mental health, mental health, mental health. We locked everyone up. We didn't let them go to school. We put everything online. So, there's a lot of mental health discussions. I have children in school and I see predatory mental health counseling that's not doing good things for children. And I would like you to all to consider that. They do a survey. They ask if someone wants to harm themselves, and then they tell them they're depressed. They tell the parent they're depressed. And the next thing you know, they're on psych meds. I have seen this with multiple children in my kids' class. So there's a lot of things to consider with what they're doing with this behavioral health, mental health, that can be very dangerous. And I would beg that you guys do some research before you start going down the road of mental health, behavioral health in the schools. Let parents do what they need to do for their kids, but don't start pushing this from the teacher perspective and the counselor perspective. So, I don't know. I could talk a lot more. I don't see the timer.
I think you have 60 seconds.
Did I talk that fast? Okay. Now I will, I'll just let my time, like I said, there's a lot of details here, but I guess I can't reinforce enough the importance of getting, you mentioned stakeholders a lot, but you don't get actual parents engaged. Fairfax County is where I live, 1 million people, 25 high schools. Almost no one even knows what a school board is. No one knows when there's a survey. No one knows anything that's going on. So rather than doing the stakeholder groups that have a few small people that are interested in something, I would ask that you maybe use the emails at the school or whatever contact information to actually reach out directly instead of having very complicated, convoluted, like your data collection could use some help as well. Like I'll do outreach and help, but for the most part, if you look at the survey that you got for this committee and for all the committees, there was very, very little input from actual parents. And I think it's really important to hear from parents and let them know what's going on.
Thank you so much, Shelley.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Jillian?
Looks like we have one more attendee to speak. I'm promoting her now. Karen Reardon, you may provide your testimony.
Hi, Karen. If you're able to hear me, you will have 2 minutes to provide your testimony.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I remain startled that we didn't do some sort of postpartum on the public health measures that were used in our school. The toll that it took on kids as far as their mental health, their social development, and their educational progress is something that needs to be discussed. I'd love to see a statement by the General Assembly that actually talks about how detrimental school closures were to our children. I am startled that instead of talking about that, we're talking about what sort of mental health measures we can put in place. And we're not looking at the cause of what occurred during COVID that created a lot of that mental health crisis. I am startled that during COVID, school boards were taking their direction from teachers' unions. For instance, in Chesterfield County, the superintendent met behind closed doors with the Chesterfield Education Association and made the decision to keep schools closed before they even had an open discussion with parents about it. He made that statement the evening prior to meeting with parents. And like I said, I remain startled that we're not looking at the causes of so many of the mental health issues that we saw during COVID. I would think we would be looking more to how do we ensure that we never have school closures again? And if something happens that's so extremely detrimental that we do, that it is done on such a um, limited situation that it would never harm our kids on the level that it did during COVID. So I am just begging this subcommittee and the General Assembly in general to take a look back at what happened to our kids during that time and to really understand how we never allow our children to slide off into such an abyss where their mental health was so effective, their socializing was so effective, and the education gap was just widened by leaps and bounds. So, I appreciate all the work you guys are doing, but I think unless we look back at what went well and what didn't go well, we're just doomed to create the same mistakes. So I'm begging you guys to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And at this time, any members of the committee who would like to provide any closing remarks? Sorry, that is my timer that I can't seem to find. I am so sorry. Any members of the committee who would like to provide comment? Okay, with that, I am going to ask Delegate Shen to take it from here while I figure out what is going. Do you all hear that? Do you so you don't hear that?
I got you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
I actually think that there's probably not a whole lot here left. Anyways, if that brings public comment periods to a wrap, Amigo, is there anything else on our? Oh, here comes Madam Chair back again.
Yes, I am back. Thank you so much. The final piece on our agenda is next steps. So we have throughout this conversation, and Amigo has been making notes on what we want to discuss further and what is tabled. I think for the public who's listening, and we're very grateful, especially for the public comment and for those who take the time to help inform us. And we are definitely taking into consideration everything that was shared. For those who are watching, I think it's important to note that we are a subcommittee. And so this conversation will continue in the full committee. And so, Amigo, could you share with us next steps before we
Yes.
adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair. The next steps are we're putting together a document that will reflect what was discussed here. That will be presented at the full joint subcommittee meeting. We're currently polling with the Senate Clerk's office, currently polling for December dates. So if you get that poll, go ahead and respond to it. We're trying to operate within the Rule 29 dates. So if we don't get anything back, we'll go back and repoll. But we're looking at one final meeting of the full joint subcommittee to receive all of the discussion from the three different subcommittees.
Okay, great. And so please, for the public, please look forward to seeing those dates online for the next full committee meeting where we will report and share information from this committee. And thank you all so much for joining us today. And with that, the meeting, if there's any further business, speak now or forever hold your peace. And with that, the meeting will adjourn. Thank you all so much.